everybody. Welcome to another edition of Fit Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz. Very pleased to welcome back to the show an organization that has been on a number of times over the last few years, but not the guests. So we're happy to have two folks here with us tonight from Fit Oshkosh, the racial literacy organization from here in town. But again, the faces of the guests are brand new faces. To my right is Morgan Bailey. He is the relatively new president of Fit Oshkosh. And to my left is Paula Steger, and she is a volunteer. She mainly oversees the library, the Color Brave Lending Library. So thanks to both of you for being here tonight. I appreciate it so much. So I guess let's, first of all, Morgan, you're new to the board. How long have you been on the board?
Oh, since about March is when I started the president's role.
Okay, so you've been at it for about 7 or 8 months now.
Yeah.
What are you from Oshkosh originally, or what brought you to Oshkosh in general?
I actually came to Oshkosh about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I came after retiring from the United States Army Nurse Corps.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
After I retired from the Army Nurse Corps.
Nurse Corps. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. How long were you in the Army?
24 years.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service.
My
father was in the Army, and I've got a host of relatives who have served in the military as well. So I'm always grateful and appreciative, and just it touches my heart when someone has served our country. So thank you very much for your service. So what brought you to Fit Oshkosh?
I actually got exposed to Fit after seeing a community offering. That community offering had to do with a documentary that had been done. I believe it was New York. It was called I'm Not a Racist, Am I? And it highlighted, I believe there were 12 youth from different boroughs within the context of New York, and they were of different ethnic backgrounds. And they were discussing racial issues, their own journey through life, and how different racial episodes impacted them. And they took them through a scenario of different exercises to have them have those uncomfortable conversations. And the offering was at Oshkosh West at the time. And that kind of stimulated me to get interested in what this organization was about, and if there was something I could contribute to it.
Okay, good. If I could just ask you to speak up a little bit louder. You don't have to yell at anybody, but I just don't want them to have trouble hearing. So that would be great. So how long have you been in the city of Oshkosh?
Approximately 10 years now.
10 years, okay. So a little bit longer than what Tracy Robertson, the executive director, has been. Where do you see the organization going in the future? What are your aspects of vision or direction that you would like to see the organization take under your leadership as president?
Well, I think as the board president, I'm to support the direction of the organizations and its strategic plan. And the strategic plan is to continue to advocate for color brave conversations through education, advocacy, and research. To have those conversations within the community so that the community has a platform to have those conversations that may be uncomfortable. You know that our world is a little bit challenged currently, to say the least, and to set a space where people feel safe, where we can talk to each other as human beings, and tackle some difficult conversations at times.
I know that in the past there have been a couple of different color brave reads, community reads, and they've been very well received, very successful. Is there any community read that is being planned for the future that you can talk about, or not specifics worked out just yet?
I think there's always going to be additional reads that will come and be offered to the community. I don't think the next read has been selected at this particular time, but those are just a platform to continue conversations within the community. There's a couple of different things that Fit will be doing for the future. I think one of the most exciting things is probably the Color Brave photo gallery that's going to be coming about in April.
Color Brave Photo Gallery. Now tell us about that.
It's a gallery to assist with changing the narrative of people of color.
So what does that mean? I mean, if I'm watching, I'm not even sure that I understand what that means, but for someone listening on the radio or watching at home or on YouTube, what if they wanted to attend that whenever it is? You said it'll be sometime in April. What could they expect to see?
Well, they can expect to see a number of photos taken of various people of color and a narrative about their history, who they are, what they do, in terms of raising the consciousness that may need to be adjusted a little bit. There's a narrative here in the city of Oshkosh that would suggest most of the people of color are here for a couple of reasons. One would be that they're escaping the hoods of Chicago or Milwaukee. Another one would be that they're here solely for the attendance of the university. And then the third one would be that they are moved here for the prison system, and that's the least of the narratives. So if you look at people of color, that's not really why they're here. They're here for opportunities just like anyone else. And I think this gallery will help showcase some of the variety of those individuals that are here.
So they will be photos of people who are Oshkonians.
Working and living in in this community and the surrounding communities.
Okay, wonderful. I hope we see yours among them.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, I'm going to advocate for that. Because there really are some very, I think, dynamic people in this community.
Yes, there are.
If I can use that word, and Tracy is certainly one of them. She, I say short time that she's been here, because it is relatively short in comparison to someone like myself, who's born and raised in this community. And she has just made such fantastic inroads in the short time she's been here. And there are folks at the university who continue to make inroads with diversity and inclusivity and that kind of thing.
Right.
And yourself. So I think you should have your photo in there and your story. So what do you feel we can do in this community because this is not a community-wide problem. This is probably a world problem, but more specifically, it's a nationwide problem. We can't turn on a TV set, a radio, or pick up any type of magazine, newspaper, or other type of social media on our phones without hearing about some kind of race-related issue that's going on in our country. Fortunately, we don't have a whole lot of issues that we know of going on in our own backyard, but I'm sure that there are some. What can people do, not just as a country, but as people within our own community, to better understand the issues of race that we're facing, and to really open their hearts and their minds to learning about their fellow neighbor and working together toward common causes?
Well, I think one of the primary things you can do is to not be colorblind, because race does matter. And not in the sense of saying that it's something that should be something that is an adversarial topic all the time, but it is a topic that through the history of our country we have failed to really address and present through our history, because it's been kind of not presented in its full context. So I think to be willing to have the conversation, to be open to having the conversations, and to be able to bridge the discomfort so that there's a safe place where because we're all human. We're all going to We all have the same fears. We all shed the same types of tears, and we all will die in so many years, right? So we need to be able to live amongst each other without some of the social context that exists today.
Mm-hmm. And for people who perhaps haven't seen Fit Oshkosh on this show in the past or heard it on the radio, I want to just talk a little bit about the terminology color brave, because that's something that I don't know if Tracy originally coined that phrase or not, but she's the first person that I ever heard actually use it instead of color blind. And I know when I first met Tracy, I told her that I was color blind, and you know, she challenged me on that, and we went kind of round and round on that. And I said, I need you to just understand what I'm saying when I say colorblind. Mm-hmm. I'm saying to you, Tracy Robertson, that I do not treat you differently because of the color of your skin. Mm-hmm. It does not mean that I don't care about the path in this world that you have walked, mm-hmm. or the troubles that you have had because of your color or anything like that. I'm just saying I do not treat you differently or with any less respect than what I would treat a fellow white person. Mm-hmm. And you know, I think she kind of accepted that. She understood what I was saying, mm-hmm. but you know, she still likes to use the word color brave rather than color blind, and I get that. So for folks who maybe don't know what the term color brave means, I think you sort of alluded to it already, that, you know, it's having those difficult conversations about color and differences of color in all of us. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Morgan, about what color brave means?
Well, I think from my perspective, I think that there are a lot of people who have a conscious intent to not treat people differently. But I also think that we have all grown up under circumstances that have equipped us to have these unconscious biases, mm-hmm. right? And sometimes those biases come up, right? And people will shy away from what those biases are creating, either mm-hmm. the feelings, either the fear, or whatever the case may be. So to be color brave is to understand your biases, mm-hmm. to work through your biases, and be willing to embrace that difficult moment.
Sure. And I can cite a couple examples. You know, not so much in town here, because it is a relatively small and pretty safe community, but I got lost one time on a side of Chicago that is predominantly black, mm-hmm. and I was fearful. I don't think I was fearful so much of the fact that I was definitely in the minority there, mm-hmm. And a woman amongst a lot of men. I really didn't see too many women, but I was fearful of the fact that that's where I knew a lot of crime took place, mm-hmm. and some violent crime, and so that was a fear factor for me. But I think probably the color thing played a little bit of a role in that as well. Sure. And all I know is I couldn't wait to get in the safety of my car and out of there, you know, out of a place where I could be shot just for being who I was there. Mm-hmm. And yet that's something that I'm sure people of color feel a lot more frequently than I did at that one time, especially in larger cities, cities where we see so much white on black crime being committed, where we see people of color being shot by police or by others. So that was one of my, I guess, biases. And I'm sure that if I thought about it, I'd come up with some others too. But I try not to think in those terms. But when you're stuck in that situation, you can't really help but feel what is kind of naturally ingrained within you, I guess.
Well, you know, in addition to that, I think the representation of people of color from a historic perspective, from the media, particularly from the news media. When you go into an environment like that, of course, because what you've seen is those environments have been painted to be, these violent individuals that are going to create some type of harm. But I would submit to you that for those of us who are black, migrating through these predominantly white societies, we have our moments of fear. We have our moments of discomfort. We have our moments of the perception of whether or not we're going to be accepted. Even though there's been a radical change from the years past to the present moment, we still have issues to work through.
Mm-hmm. Well, and going back to my little situation in Chicago, I mean, I had to ask directions, and I was very leery about that. I would be leery about asking anyone for directions,
right.
Because you hear of so many horror stories. But I was at a gas station also, and the people that I did talk with there were very nice, very kind, meant me no harm, did me no harm. But I still knew that I was in a section of the city where it had gotten a lot of, as you say, bad press, and I was fearful. So that's one of those things that's just ingrained in us. And but I do hear what you're saying. So let's talk about upcoming events. Let's move to a little bit lighter moment, and let's talk about some upcoming events. There is an annual basketball game that is held. Cops and Kids, what's the name of it? Kids and Cops, Cops and Kids?
Cops and Kids.
Cops and Kids, okay. And so it's kind of exciting because we've got what is it called now? It was being called the Herd Arena. Now the official, I just got back from vacation and this happened while I was on vacation, so forgive me if I don't have it right. Is it the Menominee Indian Arena?
I think it's just Menominee Nation.
Menominee Nation is what I believe.
Arena.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's where the ball game's going to be held now. Is sometime in spring of 2018, I guess.
I think.
I think we're hopeful.
Okay. And what I read was they are going to be a sponsor of the event, so I hope that will come to fruition too. Because I think that will be great for kids, and hopefully that'll draw in more participants, although you guys have had very good participants in recent years. I think it's grown each year.
I worked at the last one, and I was really impressed with the amount of kids who participated, and they all seemed to have I had a good time. It was fun just being there. And
yeah, I did the first one, and that one was kind of a screwed up event because, and we still had a good turnout and a good participation. The day that we were supposed to have it, there was a murder in Oshkosh. And so I got this early morning call from the then Chief of Police, Scott Groyle. He said, "I'm really sorry, we've had a murder, and my officers can't commit to anything. They have to handle this." So I got a hold of Tracy, and I said, "Oh my God, we've got all these people lined up," and so we started making phone calls, and it all turned out fine, and we rearranged it, and it still turned out really well. But I think the participation has grown each year, attendance has grown each year, and being at the arena, I mean, that I think is a wonderful thing in and of itself. So it'll hold a lot of people. So you guys got to do a lot of work promoting it to fill those rafters, fill those bleachers.
But it's a good opportunity to make a connection between the police department and the community, and to see them in a different light, and to form relationships. So I think that's a good thing.
Yep. And the new chief of police, he's not so new anymore, but I still call him the new chief because to me he is the new chief. He's been on the job about a year and a half or so now, I think. But Dean Smith is, I think, really committed to making this a city, a community that does not see color necessarily, and has everybody working together and playing together as one, as the way it should be. So that's a good thing. So let's talk for a moment or two. We'll shift gears here, and we'll get Paula involved here. There is, at the Fit Oshkosh offices, a Color Brave lending library.
that is correct.
So how long has the library been a part of Fit Oshkosh?
Well, I have been affiliated with it for a little over a year. I think I started doing it in the summer of 2016. So a little over a year. There were quite a few books already in the library. We've grown quite a bit since then. We've had to try and get more bookcases to handle the volume. One of the sections that has grown tremendously, and as I told you, I love children's literature, and we have quite a selection of children's books. Okay. And this past year, we did go into Oak Lawn School and into Merrill and into Washington, and we read to, at Oak Lawn, we read to first graders, and I believe at Merrill, I think they were third and fourth graders, and then at Washington, we went in and read to fifth grades at Washington, and so that was fun. We enjoyed it, and I had a young man working with me, and he is not with us any longer, and I miss him, but I'm hoping to grow that and continue to do that as part of our mission. Sure. I said to Tracy, I think so often it's got to start with kids, and kids are kids, and I think children don't have ingrown, prejudices, and so if we can get to the kids and have them understand that
yeah, you're right,
people are people.
Yeah, and kids are kids, and they don't see color, they don't see any of that, and especially if you have parents who are teaching their children, instilling in them good values to just treat people as people. The old golden rule: treat people the way you would like to be treated, and don't mistreat them or not even not treat them. You don't want to avoid people just because they're different from yourself.
Yeah.
Just treat them as you would treat your own family member or a good close friend, or how you would like to be treated yourself. And somewhere along the line, these prejudices start. Sometimes they're taught by parents. Sometimes they're just learned behaviors that happen over a period of time. So I think you're absolutely right about getting them while they're young, before those prejudices and biases creep in.
I have to say that I'm impressed with the teachers that I've talked to, and the 2 fifth grade teachers at Washington took their kids to see the movie Hidden Figures and had conversations about that, so I was really impressed. But I have some books.
Sure, yes. Let's talk about some books.
So,
and I also want to make the point: the library is not just with children's books.
I know, and I guess
we're talking about children's
books.
We
have an extensive. We have a lot of biographies and memoir type books. A lot of how should I say, kind of sociology, educational type. The book I want to talk about right at the moment is The Guide for White Women Who Teach Black Boys.
And let's just tip it back a little bit.
We actually had a book signing at the Fit Oshkosh Center, and Marguerite Pennock Parks, who is one of the authors. There are multiple authors who participated in putting this book together, and this blurb says, "There is no other instructional guide quite like this. While this book offers practical information and advice directly to the largest demographic of educators teaching one of the most marginalized populations of students, it transcends strategy and becomes a book of Black critical cultural studies." I am excited to read it myself. I'm not a teacher, but I think there's probably a lot of useful information in here. And we had a great turnout. We had 70 people show up, for most of them educators, but Stan Mack was there. And
our school superintendent.
And I noticed Steve Eliason, who is on the school board,
Yep.
was there. And so it was a great turnout. We were really excited about it. And I know Marguerite was too.
Is this a relatively new book?
It's brand new.
Okay.
It hadn't even hit the shelves when we had the book signing. So
that's wonderful.
Very exciting, very exciting.
Okay.
So that's one of our books. A book that is a favorite of Tracy's. So I have to confess, I guess I should put a disclaimer out there right now that I have not read, other than a couple of the children's books, I have not read any of these, and I really need to, and I really want to read this book. I think that it is something everybody.
Back a little bit. There we go.
Okay, something that everybody should read, because quite frankly, I think that there's a lot of misconception about who Malcolm X was.
Oh,
I know
absolutely.
from my standpoint there was.
And this is called the autobiography. Take it back a little bit, and if we can just get a shot of this book. There we go. Let's avoid the glare. There. It's the autobiography of Malcolm X as told to Alex Haley. And I'm sure everybody has heard of Alex Haley. That, and you're right, you know, there is a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions about who Malcolm X was,
absolutely.
what he stood for, what he did, and the role that he played in our nation's history. So,
Waking Up White is another book we have, and again, I have not read this book. The author is Debbie Irving, who is now a racial justice educator and writer, and works with other white people to transform confusion into curiosity and anxiety into action. As her husband Bruce likes to say, it couldn't have happened to a whiter person than Debbie. A young woman who works in the Fit building, the building that we occupy a floor of, recently read this book, and she just raved about it. She said, I find myself, she said it was a book that I had to read and then stop and digest and think about how I think, what my thought processes are regarding people of color. And she said I would recommend it to every white person to read this, because it's something you need to acknowledge and think about. And I just spoke to her again the other day. I'm anxious to, we do ask that people, oh, and there isn't one in here.
But you know what's really interesting about that is that when you say recommend it to every white person, right? You can also say recommend that to any person.
Any person.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because I enjoyed that book thoroughly, right? Because it allowed me to see a journey, right? A journey from someone who doesn't look like me and had a lot of preconceptions about people of color and what they thought would work, and their learning experience as they took their journey to understand people of color, work with them, and take their own walk in terms of becoming socially educated.
Oh, that.
There's a ringing endorsement of this book.
That is.
And again, it is called Waking Up White. By whom?
By Debbie Irving.
Okay.
And like I say, I love your input. I'm so glad you had that, Morgan.
Well, you know, I mean, this is just a suggestion, but that may be a book that Fit Oshkosh wants to do a community read on at some point. I don't know how you'd go about securing that many of those books, but probably much in the same way that we've secured, or I say we because I've done a couple of the Color Brave reads already, and so I was very much a part of getting books and so forth for the reads. But, you know, I think the first one was done by grant money, and all the books were purchased. And but that might be a very good read for something like that.
Absolutely.
But the library has so many wonderful books in it. You know,
it does.
Even this one, Angry White Men, was thoroughly enjoyable.
Angry White Men, and who is this by?
Well, you should have done this more.
No, absolutely not. But what I can say about the lending library is that it provides an opportunity to access books that you probably wouldn't normally read.
Absolutely.
But it also the books have a wealth of insight from a variety of perspectives. So you can get the personal walk, you can get the struggle, you can get a variety of insights in terms of what does social justice look like and what does race relationships look like in the context of our country. And for those individuals who have experienced those transformations, what they went through and how it affected them, what their learning process was for. So it's a lot of wonderful stuff in that lending library.
Yes, this is another one, Angry White Men.
And we didn't say the author's name.
The author is Michael Kimmel. It says Kimmel has made a career out of being what you might call a man translator. And it just is... It says, we hear them on talk radio airwaves bellowing about minorities. We watch them organize anti-immigration demonstrations on the border. We read their opinions regarding the demise of white male privilege. And sometimes, tragically, we witness their aggressions through vigilante violence, as in the cases of Wade Michael Page, James Egan Holmes, Elliot Rodger, George Zimmerman, and many more. They are angry white men. They are angry white men, including men's rights activists.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that's another good book. And
before we bring up the next one there, you know, this color lending library, it is in the Fit Oshkosh offices, which for anyone who is not aware, they're in the Hooper building in Oshkosh, which is located at 36 Broad Street. They are up on the 3rd floor in Suite 310. And, you know, does the Fit Oshkosh office have regular office hours? Or if someone wanted to come down and take a look at what's in the library, more of which we're going to see here in a moment, are there certain hours for the office or for the library, or how does that work?
Well, I am usually there on Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday, I'm there from 10 until noon. And on Thursday, I'm there from 11 to 1. That does not, and then we have Mandy Isaacson, who is also a part of this, and she is there on Wednesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. And we really, really want people to come and visit us and come in and look at the books, and we have space where you can sit and thumb through a book and read a little bit about it and see if
can they check the book out?
They can check the book. You can become a member of the library. We have library cards that we give you, and you can reserve books online.
At Fit Oshkosh's website, or where do they go to reserve them online?
Yes. Well, when you contact us and you become what we call a patron, and you'll have an ID number, and then we have a letter that we send out with the instructions how to go online and reserve a book, or however you'd like to do it. You can call us and reserve a book. And
sure. How long can someone typically keep a book for? Now, and I asked the question because, a library per se, you have You have to share.
It's for 21 days,
Okay.
but I always say to people when the books are overdue and they haven't returned them, I'll contact them. Usually, most of the time I call them or I email them, and all they have to do is, if they just haven't had a chance to read it, finish reading it, let me know. I'll extend the book.
Okay.
For
All
as
right.
long as it might take you to read them.
Sure.
So, but hopefully that'll change, and hopefully we'll have so many people coming to the library and taking books out, we'll have to say, has to be back in 21
Well, that's the
days.
goal of this program, by George. So now this is a very colorful looking book. I see lots of colors there on the
And
side.
this
What's
is
this one?
Everyday White People Confront Racial and Social Injustice. Yeah, I can't
There we go.
see. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, just look at the monitor and you can kind of see which way it's going, and it gives you a greater appreciation for meteorologists, I'll tell you, because it's kind of backwards, from what you would think how it would go. Everyday white people confront racial and social injustice.
And this is kind of people who have become, you know about the people of color who are social activists in the black community, but you don't always hear about white people who have become active. And this book kind of highlights people and their journey to participating in that. So this is one I definitely, this one and this one and this one are on my reading list.
They're on your
So-
reading bucket list, right?
Yes. Oh.
So now it looks like we're getting into some
Yeah.
kids' books here.
Some children's books. This is one of my favorites, Radiant Child by, I don't know if I'll say his name correctly, Javaka Steptoe. And this is about Jean-Michel Basquiat, I believe you say. He was a young man who grew up in Brooklyn, and he was a graffiti artist. His father was he a musician? Or his father loved jazz, so John Michael grew up in a house where, he was exposed to a lot of music. His mother was very creative. I believe one was Haitian and one was Puerto Rican, and I don't remember exactly how that went, but he grew up, he was multilingual. He spoke English and Spanish and French. And like I say, he was a graffiti artist who was discovered, and his artwork was, all over the world. He became very well known. It's a beautiful book. The illustrations are not his illustrations. They are Javaka Steptoe's illustrations. It's just a really colorful book. The story
Let's move that way a little bit. Yes, very,
is very sweet.
colorful.
He does do a biography of John Michael at the end of the book, which sadly he did die of a drug overdose, but not before he became very successful. He did pass away at the age of 27, but it is a children's book. It's a very beautiful story, and I think that he gives the background of him at the end of the book is really well worthwhile.
Sure.
This book is Mama's Nightingale. When I first came across this book, I was a little hesitant to read it to a classroom, but the teacher... Because, and I expressed this to Tracy, we had an engagement to go to Oak Lawn and read, and I had decided I would read this, and then I started to get nervous about reading it because it is about a little girl whose mother is in jail because she was illegal, and it deals with some frightening things and some things that could be very controversial, and so Tracy didn't let me back down.
She has that effect on people.
And I'm so glad she did. I love this story. I had to read it probably 10 times before I went into the school to read it because I didn't want to cry when I read it to the kids.
And how was the response from the children?
They loved it. The teacher loved it. And I told her about my inhibitions, and she said, oh my gosh, no. She said, you don't know how many children in our school this would be relevant to their lives. And
because they have parents in the judicial system.
So this is, again, a beautiful book, so sweet, so charming.
Do you
Lots
have,
of beautiful illustrations.
As we look at these books and picture books and so forth, is there any passage or passages that you would like to share with viewers and listeners? And I apologize for the people who are listening to this on the radio. I know you can't see, obviously, the books that we're talking about, but trust me, they are beautifully illustrated. Brilliant colors are being used with these children's books in particular. I only wish you could see them on the radio.
The story talks about how her father is trying to intervene on behalf of the mother and writing letters, and no one is paying any attention to him. And the little girl says, one day I sit next to Papa while he is writing one of his many long letters. We listen to Mama's voice together. When the room is quiet again, I ask Papa, when is Mama coming home? He looks like he is going to get angry, but then he bites his lower lip. You know, Saya, Mama loves you. Ampil, very much, very, very much. He begins telling me, then stops. He suddenly looks sadder than sad, as though Mama might never come home again. Papa, can I write letters too, I ask? Of course, he says. You can write your own story. I take Papa's advice, sit down, and write my own story. When I am done, Papa sends what I have written to one of the newspaper reporters he's been writing to. A few days later, there is a message on our answering machine. The message is from a lady reporter saying that she wants to print my story in the newspaper for everyone to read. And I'll let you figure out what happens from there.
It's a cliffhanger.
So, yes, I love this book. These both are beautiful books. I can't say enough about them. Certainly something wonderful to share with your child. This book, it made me think about when you were talking, Morgan, about the photo gallery. This is called Brown Angels, an album of pictures and verse by Walter Dean Myers. And he came across these old photographs in antique shops, and they're just beautiful, wonderful photographs of black children, children of color, black, brown, and he has written poems. He doesn't know who the children are necessarily. It's just a beautiful book. I can't say enough about it. And I don't, maybe if you don't like poetry, you wouldn't, but it's so beautiful and worth the read.
You talk about poetry and maybe somebody not liking it. Poetry is not quite the same today as it once was. Poetry is so, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's very much prose in a lot of cases these days. It's not the standard, couple lines and then something rhymes with the first line or the second line. I read, because I can't write poetry. I'm a writer professionally, but I can't write poetry. And yet, I look at poetry that others have written, and I'm like, well, that's not poetry the way I was raised to think of poetry. I could probably write that. Or not that, but I could write something like that. So, yeah, so when you say, if someone doesn't like poetry is very different, and they should probably give it a chance.
I'm looking for absolutely. I'm looking for the one poem I was reading today, and now I can't find it, of course. But yeah, it's just a beautiful book. I just love it. So many beautiful pictures. This, I think, is cute. Jeannie had a giggle. Jeannie had a giggle just beneath her toes. She gave a little wiggle, and up her leg it rose. She tried to grab the giggle as it shimmied past her knees, but it slid right past her fingers with a, "Excuse me, if you please." It slipped around her middle. It made her jump and shout. Jeannie wanted that giggle in, that giggle wanted out. And I love this picture of this. I don't know if I'm getting it in there. It's just really sweet.
People on the radio, it's just a delightful picture of a little African American girl.
She's adorable.
Did she have a bonnet on or something?
Yeah, she's adorable. So there's that one, and I can't not mention Amazing Grace. When I first saw this book, I picked it up and I was amazed to see that it was written in 1945.
Wow.
It's a delightful story about a little girl who wants to be in a play at school, and she wants to be Peter Pan, and a little white girl says, "You can't be Peter Pan because you're black," and then a little boy tells her she can't be Peter Pan because she's a girl. And so it's just a story of how she indeed does get to play the part of Peter Pan. And it actually, there are 4 books in the Amazing Grace series, and they're all really sweet, cute stories. And so, yeah, that's another one I love, like I say.
So would you say that there are like an even amount of children's books as opposed to adult books, or are they more geared toward adults?
Way more adult books, and a lot of them are kind of, more educational. I don't even want to say educational. I don't know. What would you call them, Morgan?
Well, I think any book that has potential to be educational.
Right.
But
that's true.
But I think the variety of books that are offered in the lending library will allow you to explore an American story told by a variety of people of color, and an American story that, for one reason or another, hasn't necessarily been shared within the context of a normal school system.
Okay. That's a great summation of it. And I know I had picked up a few books, and that was before I had even seen the library, actually, but I knew of it, and I had come across some books that were very much race-related, and so I donated them. They weren't among your favorites that you brought tonight. But that's okay. They're safely tucked away in the library. Who knows? Maybe someone has already checked them out. I honestly don't even remember what I brought over. But when I came across them, they just struck me as something that, oh, these are books that should be in the library. You know.
We're very grateful.
Yes. Well, and I will continue to keep my eyes open for things that would be a good fit for the lending library.
Well, and we do have novels, you know, so not quite as many as a lot, again, as I say, biographies and memoirs and social justice issues, and but just so many good books. So.
Now, I've written down the hours that you and Mandy are there. It's Tuesdays from 10 to 12, Thursday from 11 to 1, and then, well, actually, someone is there from 11 to 3 on Thursday, 1 to 3 on Wednesday, and 10 to 12 on Tuesday. So can people just come over during those times and someone will absolutely be there?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And if it's not, if say they're working, they can't make these hours, can they call over to Fit Oshkosh and say, hey, I can't get there during those hours.
Absolutely.
Can we come over
if
another
they,
time?
Because they can, when they get their library card, they can go and they can, you know, search through our catalog of books to see
online?
Online.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, you guys have really done a lot of thought and preparation.
Well, I have
with,
to say,
I mean, really,
this was already set up by the time I came in. So
yeah, but, I mean, that's really quite an undertaking if you think about it, because to have a library is one thing, but to be able to go online and look at all the books, and are there explanations or brief descriptions of what the books are, or maybe not? But you know what, you can find that, even if it's not on your website, you can find that out on the internet somewhere, what the book is about. So, and to be able to reserve a book or whatever, I mean, that's a tremendous undertaking that you guys have done, whether it was you or someone else who set it up. That's amazing.
we have a outside the office, we have a little hanging box thing, so that if someone called and said, you know, I'd like to, you know, reserve this book and I can't get there to pick it up, could you leave it for me? And we can leave them in the box, and you know, you could come and pick it up in the box, and so like that.
Okay, wonderful.
Or if you have a book and you're returning it and you can't be there, you can come and drop the book off in there too. And we do, what I did want to say too, we do have a feedback sheet, which we consider really important. People seem to, neglect it an awful lot, and we're hoping that when you read a book, you will fill out the feedback sheet, and we do record we keep the feedback sheets, but we also record them on the computer. So
I know that we can't zoom in on this to get this you know, shown on camera, but I want to read it, but also for the folks, you know, who are listening to this on the radio. It says, thank you for utilizing the Fit Oshkosh Color Brave Lending Library. Please take a few moments to provide feedback about the resource you recently borrowed. Doing so allows us to collect metrics about the value of the library, which enables us to purchase and or have more resources donated. And then it asks to write legibly, so that would probably throw me out of the works right there. But what did you like about the book or media? What did you take away from it? Should this resource stay in our Color Brave Lending Library? Why or why not? And any other recommendations about the library or books and media the library should include. And then there's optional information, you know, just asking if they can use your information and share it publicly. And so that's pretty straightforward and very simple for someone to fill out.
It is, yeah. And we really like your feedback. We want to know what you, especially if you do have suggestions for books. And we do also have DVDs.
Okay.
We have the Selma DVD, Vel Phillips, Dream Big Dreams, and we also have Hidden Figures, which someone has that out, but we do, and we have several other DVDs, so we're growing
Yes.
step by step. So
Well, it's baby steps, but isn't that what everything in life really is? Whether it's, very simple things or something
I
as
can't
significant
encourage
as this.
people enough to stop by during the day when we're there, and we do feel like maybe we should try to have some type of evening hours. So hopefully we can work on that.
More baby steps, right? Right?
Yes.
So again, the Fit Oshkosh office, which is
36
the house
Broad Street.
for the Color Brave Lending Library, is in the Hooper Building here in Oshkosh. It's 36 Broad Street, Suite 310. If you'd like to give them a call, their telephone number is 920-267-8687. I don't know if we have been putting up their website address, but for those who are listening on the radio, it is fitoshkoshinc.org, fitoshkoshinc.org, and there it is on your screen for viewers who are watching us on television or on YouTube. We've got just a couple minutes left. I wanted to also touch on, and I guess this would go to you then, Morgan. There is a cultural appreciation day being planned by the city. I don't know the exact date. I don't even know if they've come up with an exact date yet, but it is going to be held sometime in 2018. They have a lot of players present at the table. It's just a great day for people of different races, different ethnicities, what have you, to gather together at the place wherever they decide it may be, and appreciate each other and come together for one day of music, food. I'm sure that there will be some kind of presentations. I don't know if you guys are, I know you've been invited. The organization has been invited to be a seat at the table. Don't know if that's happening or not, but it's a great thing. So for people here in Oshkosh, I would suggest, keeping that in mind for sometime in 2018. Thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it so much. And that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.